Today, we'll be taking my favorite GTA 5 mission and doing a complete 180, 360, 720 Call of Duty trick shot no scope across the map. Okay, I gotta stop. But anyway, today we will be analyzing how the story of GTA 5 would play out if Michael shot Trevor in this scene right here, right before the Chinese Mafia guys show up. How would this affect Michael or his family, or Franklin, or even Lester, or Lamar? So just as Trevor asks Michael to pull the trigger in what feels like an eternity, Michael thinks about his family and how, regardless of everything, Trevor is at this moment more angry and dangerous and unpredictable than he ever was, considering that he just found out that Brad is actually in Michael's grave. So Michael would reluctantly, as a split-second decision, point blank shoot Trevor in the head, dropping him where he stands. And at that moment, the Chinese Mafia would arrive and see that Trevor is dead. And in this scenario, they wouldn't really have any reason to kidnap Michael, and the first person that would benefit the most from this would definitely be Wei Chang Sr. or Chang Sr. or Wei Chang, whatever you want to call it, who, now that Trevor is in fact dead, he can now expand into Blaine County, something that he of course could never do in the original, and had to kidnap Michael to try to blackmail Trevor into giving his business up. But like I said, Trevor is dead, so Wei Chang has no problem in this version, and he almost instantly goes about expanding his business into Blaine County. As for Michael, he goes back to his car in front of the church in Ludendorff and reflects on what he just did. And regardless of what anyone says, I believe that Michael would start to feel really guilty at this moment, since now he has some time with his own thoughts. Because at the end of the day, him and Trevor were, at least for a time, good friends, but Michael would just push the guilt down and calmly make his way back to Los Santos. And right before the mission, Pac-Man, Franklin, and maybe Lamar would start to get suspicious, as he had not heard from Trevor in days. But he would just brush it off, as Trevor probably doing some crazy shit on a bunch of drugs, and would be forced to deliver all of the cars for Devin Weston with the help of Lamar without Trevor present. Franklin and Lamar would, in this version, just like in the original, barely escape the cops and would end up at the Procopio truck stop, and Devin Weston would still scam them, so that wouldn't really change at all. But after the mission, Franklin would call Lester to get him some whereabouts on Trevor, and Lester would inform him that the last signal from Trevor's phone was a few days ago in Ludendorff, North Yankton. Lester would advise Franklin to ask Michael for some info, since it is likely that they were there together, and Franklin, confused and not knowing what to expect, would make his way to Michael's house. Michael would finally crack and admit it all, along with finally explaining the entire history that he had with Trevor back in the day. This including the deal that he originally made with Dave to get rid of Trevor once and for all way back in 2004. And Franklin would just be left speechless. And while he would be a bit upset about the fact that Michael killed his best friend, he would still understand why he did what he did. And as for Michael's family, Michael would never really tell them what happened. He would just make up some lies about how Trevor died. And while they likely wouldn't really believe him, they would just, like Franklin, accept that it was possibly for the best. And of course, Lester wouldn't really care, as he and Trevor were never on good terms to begin with. And honestly, Lester is the last person that Michael would even have to hide it all from, because like I said, him and Trevor never really liked each other. Also, real quick, I want to mention, if you're enjoying this video right now, leave a like on it and subscribe to the YouTube channel, as it would help me out a ton. We are trying to get to 1,500 subscribers by the end of this year. Thanks. But how would Trevor not being in the picture affect the whole FIB deal and the bureau raid and stuff like that? Well, they still have to rob the FIB building and delete the files, and I mean, they did that job in the original without Trevor anyway, so that would play out pretty much the same. And as for the wrap-up mission, Steve would still try to arrest Michael and Dave, but this time, Michael and Dave during the shootout would not have Trevor to cover them, resulting in Dave being shot down and killed, and Michael just barely escaping with his life. And as for the big one, the Union Depository heist, well, it would never happen, for multiple reasons. Firstly, just like Lester said, the heist could not really be done without Trevor, and even if it could have been, I don't think Michael would have even wanted to do the heist, if I'm honest, because in my eyes, I think it would remind him him too much of Trevor, and the guilt would just start creeping on him even more had he done the big one. As for the Death Wish mission, Michael and Franklin would, with the help of Lester of course, still have to take care of Steve Haynes and Devin Weston, with Franklin going for Steve Haynes and Michael taking care of Devin. The Chinese Mafia would never really be a problem, and they would never really have to be dealt with, well, because they never kidnapped Michael, they never had that fallout with Trevor and all that. I mean, they did, but Trevor's dead, so it doesn't really matter. But without Trevor in the picture, it wouldn't even cross anyone's mind to get rid of Stretch. And a few days after they seemingly successfully took care of all of their enemies, Franklin would get the call from Tanisha saying that Lamar was killed. See, since they never got rid of Stretch, he and a few ballas in the middle of the night jumped Lamar, and after brutally beating the life out of Lamar, Stretch would personally shoot Lamar, putting an end to our favorite lanky dumbass. Franklin, angry and devastated, would that same day contact Michael and Lester for one last piece of business. And after Lester, in his usual quick fashion, manages to locate Stretch at the recreational center in Chamberlain Hills, Michael and Franklin would meet a block away with not only Juggernaut suits, but 2 miniguns, and in a matter of seconds, they would massacre a dozen of ballas, leaving Stretch for last on purpose. And while Michael would not say a word and stay silent the whole time, Franklin would simply ask, "Why'd you do it?" And Stretch would begin to justify himself and his actions, but before he could even finish a sentence, Michael and Franklin would unload the thousands of minigun bullets right in Stretch's direction. And after maybe 20 seconds of this, Stretch would be literally unrecognizable. Franklin would thank Michael, and the 2 friends would go their separate ways, now finally being able to live out the rest of their lives. Unfortunately for Michael though, he could never truly find peace and actually live out the rest of his life in peace, as the memory of Trevor would constantly be somewhere in the back of his mind, and whenever the guilt would creep up on him, he would just blank it out and keep going, either by simply not thinking about it. However, when that would not work, he would go back to drinking excessively, and essentially he would have to spend the rest of his life living like this. And with that said, I want to end off this little GTA 5 what if. Did you guys enjoy this one? If you did, leave your thoughts in the comments down below. Actually, leave your thoughts in the comments down below regardless, if you did or did not enjoy it. Do you want me to do any what ifs that you want to see? Well, of course, leave them down in the comments. I always reply and read your comments. I do my best to at least. And until the next video or stream, thank you so much for watching, and bye bye.